I recommend an excellent book called The Making of Modern Twickenham by local historian Professor Michael Lee. And more recently, our very own Teresa Reid has written an engaging account for Twickenham Online. Now, you may well ask, does the history really matter? As Henry Ford said, history is bunk, more or less. Well, at the very least, the history of the site may well explain how we got where we are today. So where do we start? Well, if we go back to prehistoric times, there were dinosaurs roaming along the Twickenham Riverside. Of course, eventually these became extinct, although there is some evidence that one or two may have survived and are now serving on Richmond Council. But does the Riverside really matter? A friend of mine from Teddington asked me, why do you keep going on about the Richmond Riverside? As far as he is concerned, Twickenham is somewhere you pass through on the way to Richmond. I suspect this is a view shared by some members of the council, especially its leader, Councillor Serge Lowry, who lives in Kew. Certainly the Highways Department puts Twickenham Junction at the top of its priorities just to keep traffic moving. And the council itself has admitted that the Riverside ranks relatively low on its list of priorities. Certainly, Twickenham ain't what it used to be. In its heyday in the 17th and 18th century, it was regarded as the rural retreat for the rich and famous. They built large and elegant houses on the banks of the Thames, and some of the larger houses were set in extensive grounds. Of these, only Marble Hill, Strawberry Hill and York House remain. At the heart of Twickenham was the ancient settlement itself, bordering the river and partly confined by the adjacent estates of Richmond House and York House. In this area lived the core of the trading and artisan community, generation after generation of intermarrying families, some for up to 400 years. Their descendants still live here today, not least the Houghton family, who ran the famous ferry. And Frida is here to represent the Houghton family. Starting in the 19th century and accelerating in the early years of the 20th century, the great houses by the river became too expensive to maintain, and much of the land occupied by the larger properties were sold off for housing and commercial development, which changed the environment forever. No longer was Twickenham the classic village set in an Arcadian landscape on the banks of the River Thames. But this history has undoubtedly inspired subsequent generations of residents who wish to retain all that is best from its past inheritance. A crucial moment in the history of the area came as a result of development in the property market following the First World War. Two major houses which dominated the centre of the town, York House and Richmond House, came onto the market at the same time. The council needed new premises, and in 1922, Richmond House came into public ownership. There was strong public opposition to the purchase, as people feared that demolition would follow and that the land would be developed with public buildings. So after extensive public lobbying, York House was chosen instead as the new town hall. Richmond House was built in 1816, replacing an earlier house from the 17th century. Its purchase by the council was funded by the sale of land for commercial development along King Street. However, a substantial area survived as open space and later accommodated the open-air baths on the embankment, which opened in 1935. The baths were closed for financial reasons in 1980, and there followed a number of ambitious proposals to develop the site. The first proposal for development was submitted by Marks and Spencer, and this led to a public inquiry in 1991. The inspector recommended rejection of the proposed development and said that contiguity with the village and the river should determine the nature and scale of any future development of this land, and commercial ambitions should be kept subordinate. But the next project, following an architectural competition in 1998, was by Alsop Sogolovich, whose scheme ignored the inspector's report and included not only more shops and a block of flats, but some public facilities such as a small arts theatre complex and a private health club with swimming pool. The whole set of buildings was to be financed by Dorney Day Limited, which had succeeded Hill Samuel as the owners of the southern side of King Street. This scheme was abandoned following vigorous opposition by the public to the scale of the development. Following the local elections in 2002, the new Conservative Council proposed a short-term scheme which involved the demolition of the old swimming bath building to provide public space on the embankment with the addition of a children's play park and a cafe. The swimming pool building was demolished in November 2004 and the playground opened in 2005 as part of the new landscaped Jubilee Gardens. In July 2009, the Lib Dem Council announced that following public consultation, it had chosen a national house builder, Countryside Properties, to work with the Council and the Environmental Trust for Richmond upon Thames to deliver the Council's plans for the site. Their scheme would be funded by new private housing built to the rear and side of the site. The Council hopes the scheme will achieve planning permission towards the end of the year, with work to start early in 2010. But the Council is currently waiting for the up-to-date financial position of the developer to be scrutinised before signing a contract. The developers latest publish accounts when they go up to the year 2007. Now, what lessons can be learned from this melancholy tale? Well, the first is that councils come and councils go, and developers follow in their wake. They circle like vultures looking for an easy kill. They are keen to exploit any development opportunity, provided there is a healthy return on their investment. They are in it for the money, with little regard to the long-term effect on the community. They are here today and gone tomorrow. But throughout the period, the public, when consulted, has demonstrated its opposition to selling off public assets for development. In the case of the swimming pool site, it has repeatedly shown a preference for an open landscaped area, possibly with a town square as a venue for a farmer's market, an area for public air performances such as plays and music, and a centre for youth and community activities. There is support for a river centre, but not one that relies on a private housing development in order to fund it. Now, to be fair, it must be acknowledged that the Lib Dems have plenty of experience over the years of dealing with developers, and they should be well aware of the pitfalls, especially after their experience with the sale of the Richmond ice rink in the 1980s and 1990s. Will they never learn? At the very least, these issues should provide a basis for a lively debate at the next local elections, only a matter of months away. This meeting provides an opportunity for you to have your say. Can we save our Riverside? History says, yes, we can.